Hi, today we're making broiled lobster tails. The lobster tails we're using are imported wild from Canada and they are completely frozen. So what we're going to do is we're just going to flash them with some heat, and you can see here that the underneath is exposed but the skin is intact. You want to try to smash them, break them apart so that they're juggling link. And put them back in the stack here. Now, we still have one runaway. Okay, excellent. So, I want you to give it some heat so that you melt the ice. And then once it's melted, we get it ready for the marination stage. So we're cooking 8 lobster tails, and while it's defrosting, we're going to need about 1 stick of butter. I'm using an all-natural butter that's unsalted. Grab our knife here, and I don't really feel like I'm peeling it, so I'm just going to cut it straight down the center like this. Create my own little way to open it up here. Anyway, once it's done peeling, we're just going to throw it in the pan. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one. And don't worry, we're going to make it look nice. It's going to be a little irrelevant because I'm going to be pouring it on the lobster anyway, but presentation is part of the recipe. Okay, excellent. So next thing we're going to do is add a good amount of paprika to the top of the butter, like so. And another secret part of our recipe is going to be the use of cilantro. Now we want to be able to wash the cilantro a little bit, because the goal is going to be to get the actual juice of the cilantro into the butter and eventually straight into the lobster. So it's going to be good. We're going to leave a little bit for later, but I have basically 1 serving that you can pick up from the supermarket at any given time. And your end result afterwards is going to look pretty nice. One of the other ingredients that's going to be necessary is going to be garlic, a pretty generous amount of it. You want to garlic the butter right there, and that'll help to neutralize the fishy smell and taste of your lobster. So we're going to melt this. Here it is right now. While the butter is melting, what you want to do on the base of the pan is you want to add a lime, and you're going to end up using a lot of these because, again, lime or lemons helps to neutralize the smell and taste of the lobster. You want to be generous in squeezing that lime onto the butter and the cilantro. This will also help as a medium to be able to eventually extract more juice from the cilantro. As it melts, and you can now see the separation of the butter. Let's move forward. We just keep this going, and eventually this becomes the base sauce that we're going to use for the marination while it's broiling, and it's also going to be the marination that we're going to use for the asparagus and the grilled or sautéed onions. Now, while your butter marinade is simmering on low, like so, you occasionally want to pick it up and kind of swirl it around to make sure that the butter doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. It's important. Keep that on low. And while that's happening, you're going to want to prepare the lobster tail. Now, lobster tail, like so, is going to be the part of the lobster that has the most amount of protein. And it's also, in my opinion, the most delicious part. Not much cleaning to do with this in the tail, but there is a preparation note that I think is important for broiling. For broiling the lobster tail, you want to take some food shears or scissors here, and you want to cut straight down the middle of the tail, like so, entering the blade here at the top and working towards the bottom of the tail, and cut all the way to the end. Leaving just a millimeter there to the tail's end. Then you want to pry crack the top open, not completely ripping it off, but just enough to expose the meat on the inside, so that the fire will have access, and so will you, as you start to marinate it as well. And that's what that looks like. And we're going to do this with all 8 of our lobster tails and get them ready to broil. So now I've finished prepping the lobster tails, which involve cracking them and cutting them. I also gave them a wash under hot water again one last time to clean up the inside of the lobster. You might find some miscellaneous debris or cracked shells or even some loose veins. Make sure you cut those out so you have a better taste and easier cook time. Once it's cleaned, you're ready to marinate it, and then you can also season it, and then we'll pop it in the broiler. While we're preparing to marinate and dress the lobster tails, go ahead and turn your broiler on. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the marinade that we've been making on the pan and pick it up and give it a bit of a swirl, because you'll see it gets a little bit tough on top. You want it to be liquidy. And then we're going to apply it right onto the lobster, like so. Getting it, make sure you get it into every crevice of every lobster. Try to be fair and get it evenly into each one. And if you have a little extra left, make your way back again and treat the lobsters to a second or third serving of your butter marinade. Once that's been applied, you want to grab some fresh peppercorn, just pepper that we're grinding fresh ground pepper, into each lobster. Give it a kick, and you want to do the same thing with salt. I have some pink Himalayan salt here, which gives a little more texture than regular salt, but you can also use kosher salt. And that'll work as well. You get that in there for seasoning. And once you get that going, the next thing you want to do is pop the lobster straight into the broiler. And we've given about 5 minutes for the broiler to preheat. So here we go. You can see the fire is nice and hot underneath, coming from the top. And you want to get it as close to the top as possible so you can get a good barbecue in there. Alright, now we're going to close the lid. And this part requires frequent checks with your broiler, because depending on the strength of your broiler, these lobster tails could be ready in as little as 10 minutes, depending also on how frozen it was before and how hot the water was that you used. So you want to continuously check on the lobster. One of the methods you can use is to grab a fork and prod the meat a little bit to see if it's ready or if it's still rubbery. If it's rubbery, it means it needs some more time to cook. Also, the best indicator is to look to see if there's just a slight bit of a kiss by the fire on top of the lobster meat. You'll see a little bit of a redding of the meat on top. That's a great sign for the lobster being perfect. You don't want it too overdone, and you don't want it underdone. Right when it just touched a little bit, that's when you want to pull it out. So that's going to require a couple of checks. I would check on your lobster every 5 minutes or so to see where it's going. And once you see that fire kiss, as I call it, we'll go to the next phase, which will be to prepare it with the side dishes as well. Okay, now we're going to prepare our side dishes. I've got some organic asparagus here. I've already washed them in the sink. What you want to do with your asparagus is cut the ends off. Give it just about the last inch. That way you can get them really fresh. And then once you've cut them at the bottom, just grab them in half and just cut them in half like so. Toss them in the pan. And you're going to want to use half an onion for our sauteed onion. I've already cut mine in half, but I'm going to just cut on top like so. And get some nice thin slices because they cook a lot faster. And I go down vertically, and then one time I go down horizontally. And don't worry, you won't tear up because we won't be doing it for too much longer than this. Once it's done, it doesn't have to be an exact science. Just toss it in with the asparagus, like so. You want to use half a stick of butter to get the taste. Started out in the center there. And you want to use some of the similar seasonings as we did before, which is the paprika. And also garlic. And then also a lime. This way you have continuity in taste. It means everything kind of tastes the same. And later we'll be able to mix these foods together and not disturb the taste of the lobster. There we go. So we're going to start this also on a medium heat and check on this as well as time goes by. And in order to get the process moving a little faster, we're going to cover it with a lid so that the steam can also help. So I'm starting this thing out on medium. I'm putting the top on. I'll be checking on it, and then in a little bit I'll lower it down to a simmer on low because the heat will also help the asparagus cook. Okay, so as you can see, our lobsters are ready. You're going to see some proper charring on the outside of the shells here, but once you open it up, it'll reveal that fire-kissed look that I was talking to you about earlier, and that means it's ready. For cilantro as a garnish, you want to get that into the shells, into all of the shells, at least a couple of leaves, and then you want to add quite a bit of lime at the end because a lot of that has evaporated while you were broiling it earlier. Okay, and once you get your lime into your lobster tails will be ready to go. Next, we're going to have to look at the side dish. Now, you're welcome to turn the heat on underneath a little bit just to keep it warm as you're waiting, in case you're still waiting on this. Ours are ready to go at the moment, but you'll notice that the majority of the butter has melted. So if that's the case, make sure to keep your lobsters warm, while what you do in this particular case is you simply add some water. So a proper saute, the difference between sauteing and frying is instead of using oil, you use water to water fry your vegetables. So I come around here, I add a little bit of water to my veggies like so, put it back onto the grill here, cover it up, put it back on medium, and give it another maybe 5 minutes. My particular lobster tails took me only 10 minutes to make because I was able to let them bathe in some hot water. But make sure you check it every 5 minutes because, as I said, ours was ready really quick and it looks beautiful. So once this thing's good to go, you're going to add the sauteed vegetables along the side. Serve with a cold beverage of your choice. It pairs well with white wines. Champagne is excellent. You could also have it with beer, or you could have it with sparkling water and some lime to help break it down. So that's our recipe for the day. I'll check back with you one more time just to show you what it looks like on the table. So we've now lined up all our lobster tails on a pretty dish. You can see it's been served with the sauce that was in the pan. And our asparagus and sauteed onions are ready. You can see the onions are also lightly cooked, and the asparagus has lightly changed color, which means it's good. You don't want it too soft or too hard. You want it just right. And then just throw it on top, kind of like abstract art, to get the juices of the asparagus now into the lobster. You want to top it off again with some cilantro. Get some more deep green color in there. And then tie it all together again with as much lime as you can handle. That's all for us. This is what the final product will look like. And as you can see, the insides of the lobster are cooked to perfection. And trust me, you're going to enjoy this meal.